I think sometimes we can get sucked into what everyone else is doing, or again, what it looks like we should be doing. And we see this kind of clear path because, let's be real, everything is unknown. We're all just making it up as we go. Every single day, the world is changing, right? That's our only constant. And so when there's a box to check and a goal to actively strive for, especially one that really makes sense in the eyes of others, it can be way easier to pursue it. There's so many things here that can feel like there's an easier option because it makes more sense and it requires less brain power and there's less unknown and it's less scary, but it might not make the most sense for you. Welcome to Here for More podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Kraus, and this is the show where we're as passionate about personal growth as we are about saving the planet. We know that life's not just a list of boxes to check off, and we don't sit around just waiting for lightning to strike. We are action takers. We're proactive, passionate, and determined to massively impact this earth and the people on it. For as much as I've already learned throughout my own life, I know there's a lifetime more to go, which is why I'm taking this journey right alongside you. We can do the hard things we dream of. We can answer our soul's deepest callings, and we don't have to do it alone. Our journey towards greater purpose, fulfillment, and joy evolves just as we do. It starts right here, right now, and again tomorrow. This is what it means to be here for more. Hey there, it's Natalie. I'm your host of Here for More podcast, and I'm here today with a solo episode for you all about intentional living. If you've been a listener of Here for More podcast for a while, you may have noticed that sometimes I read books and I get really inspired, and then I feel compelled to come on this show and tell you about them and teach on certain topics. And you guessed it, it's happened again. So I recently finished reading The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. I've been an entrepreneur now for about 2 years, and why I haven't read this book sooner, I have no idea. But what I do know is that if I had read this book any sooner, I probably wouldn't have been ready for it, or I would have taken away a very different message than what I'm taking away today. And you know what? If I read it again in a few years, then I'll probably take away a different message then too. That just shows how we're always changing and shifting and growing, right? Which is exactly what this show is all about. We are here for the change and the growth because the only constant in life really is change, right? That's what this whole last year has taught us, I think. So anyways, let's get back on track. Are we being intentional with our life and work? That is the theme that I'm bringing you today. And it's not a new concept. It's not a new theme. It's not something I've never talked about. I'm sure it's something you've heard before from others. I'm sure it's something you've thought about in your own life. But I'm going to bring it to you today in maybe a way that's a little bit different than you've thought about it before. And the thing is, I am going to challenge you a little bit in this episode. I hope it's kind of challenging because it's helpful to get your brain thinking in different ways, to kind of break outside the bubble of our normal thoughts. I mean, that's a huge reason for listening to podcasts, right? Is to be exposed to someone else's thoughts or knowledge or expertise, to just hear maybe the same things in new ways. So I'm going to bring you some ideas today that are not meant to overwhelm you, but are purely meant to just get your brain thinking, to get you to be a little introspective about how you're living your life currently, about what you're working for in life, what you're working towards, meaning goals, future vision, what that dream vision of your life looks like, and then how you're actually spending each day. With work, with family, with whatever else fills your days. Okay, so that's kind of what we're going to go into. And the 4-Hour Workweek, if you've never read it before, just a quick little background on it. It's exactly what it sounds like. Tim Ferriss, the author, is teaching you exactly how to go from your maybe typical 40-hour work week or more. I know there's so many people out there who work 50, 60, 80, 100 hours a week. There's some wild stories in this book about people who have just worked some pretty wild work schedules. But he is teaching you the exact steps that he's taken and that others have taken in his community to scale that back to 4 hours per week. That is not a metaphor. No, literally a 4-hour work week. What does that even mean? What does that even look like? How can you work 4 hours a week? Oh, and in that 4 hours a week, while he's working less, while these people are working less, they are making more, way more, often more than they ever made in their previous lives. And that's not the case for everyone, but that's kind of the idea of this. And I want to preface the idea of the 4-hour work week, the idea of working less and making more, by saying this is not about being lazy. This is not about cutting corners. This is not about just trying to do what it takes to get to the top. No, this is, as I said in the very beginning of this episode, as you probably read in the title or the description of this episode, this is about being intentional. Okay. And like I said, I've been on this entrepreneurship journey for about 2 years, and it has been a massive awakening, a massive journey of self-discovery for figuring this piece out of how to be more intentional. So maybe you've heard of the concepts of eliminate, automate, delegate. That's not really what we're going to go into today, but those are, just to kind of get your brain on the right track of like, okay, well, how could this even be relevant to me? How could I work 4 hours per week? Would I even want to only work 4 hours per week? That's what we're going to talk about. Eliminate, automate, delegate. It gets you to take a look at your life. And it's a concept I've mentioned on this show before. What are you doing right now? And not just in your work, like in everywhere in your life. What are you doing right now that you don't need to be doing? Because what is something that as humans, bless our hearts, that we say all the time? I'm so busy. Oh, I'm sorry I didn't get to it yet. I'm so busy. Oh, I would love to get together with you for dinner, but I'm so busy. And we can be very genuine about it too. It's not a cop out all the time. We're just busy. But why the heck are we so busy? And if you're like, well, Natalie, obviously I'm busy. I got 4 kids and bills and a job and a marriage and, I got all the things and I'm trying to have hobbies. Yes, your busyness is legitimate. But there could be a way to live your life a little more intentionally. What could be eliminated? What doesn't need to happen? What, if you didn't do it, the world would keep spinning. The world wouldn't just stop. Your world wouldn't fall apart because you didn't do that thing. What could you stop doing? Maybe it's scrolling on social media. I've been listening to some podcast episodes recently on quitting social media, on digital minimalism. And I love, love, love this concept because I'm the person who used to run my business in a way that I thought that if I didn't show up on social media every day, my business would fall apart, that I would become irrelevant, that all of my audience and my clients and just everyone would just forget about me and it would go under. If I wasn't online one day, if I wasn't online for a week, that was out of office. Nothing was happening in the business. If I wasn't there, nothing was happening, which sounds silly maybe, but that was my truth at the time. Those were my beliefs at the time. I didn't want them to be that way, but they were. And I've since then shifted that massively. But anyways, kind of going back to this, so that eliminate, like what could I take out and things would still be okay? What can you automate and still be okay? Whether it's like automatic email responders telling people you're out of office or telling people you're only available at certain times. What can you delegate? What can you give to someone else to do? Right? What can you outsource? You could hire a VA at any level of life. If I've learned one thing, you don't have to be a Fortune 500 CEO to hire a virtual assistant. And virtual assistants are there to not only help you with business related things or even employee related things, but also life things. Okay, so again, that's not what this episode is about, but that is kind of this idea of how to start on the path to your 4-hour work week. What could you eliminate? What could you automate? What can you delegate? Okay, but this episode is about intentionality. So it's not just figuring out how to set up our lives in the best way so that we don't have to work that much. It's figuring out how to set up our lives in a way that's going to allow us to live our very best life. So, what you need to do, maybe you already do this, but come back to this often. What does the very best version of your life look like? And this might be a little fuzzy, and you might not totally know. But just right now, based on the knowledge you have today, if there was no limits, what does the very best version of your life look like? And this is where the intentional piece comes in. Are you living your life right now to set you up for that best version of your life? So are you living intentionally? Are you working intentionally? Or are you just doing what you should, air quotes around should, be doing? Are you living intentionally? Are you setting those boundaries? Are you saying yes to things? Are you saying no to things intentionally? Or are you just scared of what's going to happen if you don't do it? Are you just unsure of any other option for you? Are you living? Are you really living right now? Or are you waiting for the future to live, for some unknown date, some unknown goal to reach, and then that's your permission to start living? Are you really living, or are you just checking off boxes? Do you have goals that feel really, really good to you? Or are you just checking off the boxes? I've been there. I've been there with all of these big time. I've done what I thought I should be doing. I've done things just because I was scared of what if I don't do these things. I've just gotten stuck in that cycle of just checking off boxes because I didn't know what else to do, and the easiest thing was to say, give me a checklist and let me feel purposeful. Give me a checklist that I can actually make progress on, and just feels good to check things off. Have you ever done that? Have you ever just made a to-do list? You already accomplished those things for the day, or maybe they're like super simple tasks like eat breakfast, and then you just check them off just to feel accomplished. And hey, you know what? That is not a bad thing. That's actually a really great strategy. No matter where you're at in life, if you're kind of struggling with feeling like you're getting stuff done each day, if you're feeling like you're just not moving forward in the way you want, if you want to feel more productive, that strategy can be awesome, of just having some things to check off your list. But also, don't kid yourself that you are making this progress towards that dream life when you're just checking off boxes for the sake of checking off boxes. Okay, so you might have heard, I don't know, you might have heard the whole go to high school, go to college, get a job, get married, get a house, start a family. Have you heard that? Yeah, I guarantee you have. Well, those are all boxes. And that is okay if you actually want to check them off, right? I think sometimes we can get sucked into what everyone else is doing, or again, what it looks like we should be doing. And we see this kind of clear path because, like, let's be real, everything is unknown. We're all just making it up as we go. Every single day, the world is changing, right? That's our only constant. And so when there's a box to check and a goal to actively strive for, especially one that really makes sense in the eyes of others, it can be way easier to pursue it. So if you say to someone like, my goal is to finish college, or to get this job, or to buy this house, people will say, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, go you. But if you're like, oh, my goal is to drop out of college and go pursue this business endeavor over here, or I'm going to go travel the world for a year, then people kind of look at you a little funny. Or then they'll say like, oh, for a year? Cool. Good for you. Go do that. But then you'll come back and re-enter the normal society life workforce kind of ordeal, right? And you might be sitting there like, oh yeah, that is probably what I should do, right? But there's no rules. There's no rules. So the reason that I'm saying all this stuff is because this is how you start to get intentional about your life. This is how you start to get intentional about your life and work and recognize whether or not you're actually working towards that future vision, those big goals, that best life vision that you have for yourself. And it comes down to you asking the question, what do you actually want? What do you actually want? Do you want to go back to school? Do you want that type of job? Or do you want to do something else? Do you want to be an entrepreneur? Or is it just what all your friends are doing? Do you want to be a coach? Or is it just what it seems like is the only option for you based on your expertise? Do you want a house? Or are you just not sure what the next step is? There's so many things here that can feel like there's an easier option because it makes more sense and it requires less brain power and there's less unknown and it's less scary, but it might not make the most sense for you. And that's okay, because this prescription of life, high school, college, job, house, family, like retirement, that is not one size fits all. That is not one size fits all. And hey, if you're listening to this and those are the boxes that you genuinely want to check, and that is your life prescription, awesome. Awesome. I'm celebrating you. But if you don't, if that's not you, well, I'm here to tell you then that's also great. And there is more for you. This is where getting intentional, getting clear about that future vision really comes into play. What do you actually want? Before you actually know what you want, it is super hard to even define those new boxes, so to speak. And your life doesn't exist in a box. You are far more than a box. But having those checkpoints to keep reaching towards, to be able to look at the work you're doing right now and say, yes, this is helping me get to that next point, or no, it's not. Like there has to be some kind of vision that you can check in with yourself, So I understand that this can be challenging because I've been many a time in a place of being very stuck. So has my husband, Jess, where we're like, we don't know. We don't know what we want. We're not sure. Everything is unknown. I don't know what I like. I don't know what I'm good at. So I don't know what I want. But I would challenge you to say that you actually probably do know a little bit more of what you want. Or maybe sometimes the easier question to answer is what you don't want. So for me, when I was at my most stuck and I didn't know what I wanted, but if you were to ask me what I didn't want, I would have been able to tell you very clearly, well, I don't want to be back in an office. Well, I don't want to work 40 hours a week. So right there, we've just eliminated a whole slew of things off the table. And then it just kept getting more narrow and more narrow. And it was like, okay, I don't want to own a home right now. Fine, then, okay, great. We'll take homes off the table. What do you want? Well, I don't know. Well, is it in one plate? Do you want to stay here? Do you want to go somewhere else? So you just start to ask yourself these questions. Without asking yourself those questions, you're never going to get to the dream life. You're never going to get to that because you're not actually directed towards anything. So you could check off these boxes: high school, college, job, house, family, and then be like, what now? And tell me if this sounds familiar. Someone checks off all these boxes, just waiting for the golden years, right? Maybe it's retirement. And then they get there and they're like, well, what now? Or maybe you do have a vision. Maybe it's travel, a trip abroad. You're going somewhere for a year. And then you do it. And then that year passes. And then it's like, what now? Right? So you might think those thoughts like, oh, okay, so I want you to, backing up a step. What if you only had to work 4 hours a week? That was a part in this book when Tim Ferriss was asking, what if you could only work 2 hours a day? You had to scale back to 2 hours. Okay, now what if you could only work 4 hours a week? What if you could only, work this many hours per month? What would you do? Where would you spend your time? What would you do with your time outside of those hours? So there's a little part in the book right here. You knew I couldn't bring a book on here and not read to you part of it, right? Let's see here. Here we go. So page 256 of the book, Emotional Freedom is the title of this section. True freedom is much more than having enough income and time to do what you want. It is quite possible, actually the rule rather than the exception, to have financial and time freedom but still be caught in the throes of the rat race. One cannot be free from the stresses of a speed and size obsessed culture until you are free from the materialistic addictions, time famine mindset, and comparative impulses that created it in the first place. Whew, okay, we'll unpack that in a second, but let me just finish this little section. This takes time. The effect is not cumulative, and no number of too weak, also called too weak, like W-E-A-K, weak, like you're too weak to lift something. No amount of 2 week sightseeing trips can replace one good walkabout. In the experience of those I've interviewed, it takes 2 or 3 months just to unplug from obsolete routines and become aware of just how much we distract ourselves with constant motion. Can you have a 2-hour dinner with a Spanish friend without getting anxious? Can you get accustomed to a small town where all businesses take a siesta for 2 hours in the afternoon and then close at 4 p.m.? If not, you need to ask why. Learn to slow down. Get lost intentionally. Observe how you judge both yourself and those around you. Chances are that it's been a while. Take at least 2 months to disincorporate old habits and rediscover yourself without the reminder of a looming return flight. Ooh, I love that part. And he really throws in there some big ideas: materialistic addiction, time famine mindset, and comparative impulses. That's our society. That is our society. Amazon one-day shipping, has gotten us used to if it can't be here tomorrow, then maybe it's not worth it, And we see how these things that can be bought for so much cheaper. Well, if it's more expensive somewhere else, why would I buy that when I could buy it cheaper here? I could get it done faster this way. What the heck is slow shipping? And we're starting to recognize the benefits, thankfully, because of climate change, of slow fashion and slow shipping and this kind of slower process. And we're seeing these kind of damages of this go, go, go all the time, right? So we are becoming more mindful of these things, which I think is wonderful. But it's still, I've found myself where I didn't really, need to do any more work for the day. And then I'm sitting there like, what do I do now? I don't really have any errands. Like, do I go on a walk? No, I already walked today. I already worked out today. What do I do? What do I do? When was the last time you were just bored? When was the last time you were bored and you didn't pick up your phone or turn on the TV or just continued to scroll on your computer? There's a concept in this book, The 4-Hour Workweek, that he talks about called work for work's sake, where you don't really need to do anything else. You're done with your workday. Or maybe you're procrastinating on the thing that you actually need to do. Guilty. I've been there many a time. I still have to catch myself. And we end up doing just work for work's sake. We're like, I got to check these emails, or I'm doing research, and then you're like lost in your computer for an hour. And where did the time go? Don't do work for work's sake. That is a waste of your life, just to be extra harsh with you. It happens every now and then, right? Like, it happens, but also don't let it happen every day. This is a reminder for you as much as it is for me, because I get stuck in that too. Okay, so I said how I've been on my entrepreneurship journey for 2 years now, and part of the reason that I stepped into this journey was to have freedom. because the things that society told me to go do, the corporate job or the traditional job, the traditional path, so to speak, like it didn't fit for me. It didn't fit, and I wanted more freedom from it, and I envisioned something else for my life, but I wasn't sure what. And so it wasn't like I was always dreaming of being an entrepreneur, but that's just what fit naturally. It was like, oh, well, you don't want to do any of these things, and you're not really sure, and you want this freedom, so like maybe entrepreneurship is the path for you. But over the past 2 years, if you've been following me on this journey, you know this, I have changed and pivoted so many times. I would try something and then learn and then pivot, and try something and learn and pivot. And I don't need to get into all that, but the point is here is each step of the way, I was slowly becoming more intentional about what I was doing and why I was doing it. So when I became a coach, an online coach, I mentioned in the beginning of this episode how I was very reliant on social media for my client base. And it's a great thing. It's a great way to build a client base through social media. But unfortunately, I got stuck in kind of this toxic cycle of feeling like I needed to be on it all the time. And why did I feel that way? Well, probably because people, other coaches, not just people, other coaches are also online every time. So if they're showing up, well, then I need to show up to be successful. And so I started comparing myself, and I wrote this paradigm that said, in order to be successful, I need to show up as often as possible. And if I'm not showing up, then I'm not doing business. And that not only was that an unhealthy paradigm, not only was that not true, it also was not aligned with that vision of my best life. Because in my very best life, in my future, I am not online all day. I am not at my computer all day. In my best life, I can step away from my computer for a week or two, and my business is still running. Yes, I'm doing things before that week or two to set things up, maybe to make sure that the right people have the right tools so that things can keep running. But I can step away and everything will be fine. Things will not fall apart. In fact, things will continue to thrive. That is the truth that I'm building for myself now and that I was not before. So if you follow me on Instagram, you might have seen how, I share on podcast episodes and I share clips. And then I think for the past 3 weeks, I haven't shared anything about my podcast. I've been doing other stuff. I've been with family. I've been, working through some other life things. I've just been having time truly disconnected, a little less disconnected. A little more disconnected from social media. And at first I felt that pressure come back like, oh, if I don't post about this episode, no one's going to know about it. No one's going to listen to it. And guess what? People still listened. You still listened. The numbers was still there. They're still going up and up and up every day. And it didn't matter. But I had to really intentionally make that shift to actually get there. And so just to kind of circle this whole thing together, close the circle. When you take a look at your life, and you ask yourself, are you being intentional? And you hold this vision of your best life over here, and you look at where you are now and you see like, okay, am I making the connection? Am I doing, are the things I'm doing today helping me get over there? You also ask, are the things I'm doing today, like, am I living my life right now? Right? Am I enjoying the days I'm living right now? Because there's hard work and there's hustle, and not every day is going to feel, you're not going to feel like $1,000,000 every day, right? And you got to keep going. You got to keep going to get to that dream life, to that best life vision that you have. But then you'll be able to more clearly see like, okay, am I having a bad day or a bad week or a bad month? Maybe bad's not the right word, but just like a tough time, and something needs to change because I'm actually having a tough time and I'm not even moving in the direction towards my best life? Or is this just tough right now and I need to keep going and find things that do light me up and do make me happy and bring me joy, but I got to keep going because I am moving towards that best life? Does that make sense? That intentionality is what's going to get you to that place you really want to be. So, how I'm going to leave you today is with one more reading from this book. And this is a little story that Tim Ferriss shares in his book. He didn't write it, I don't think. It came from someone else. So I'm borrowing it from him who borrowed it from someone else. I just want to give credit where credit is due. So, and this, I hope, puts this whole concept into perspective. All right. An American businessman took a vacation to a small coastal Mexican village on doctor's orders. Unable to sleep after an urgent phone call from the office the first morning, he walked out to the pier to clear his head. A small boat with just one fisherman had docked, and inside the boat were several large yellowfin tuna. The American complimented the Mexican on the quality of his fish. "How long did it take you to catch them?" the American asked. "Only a little while," the Mexican replied in surprisingly good English. "Why don't you stay out longer and catch more fish?" the American then asked. "I have enough to support my family and give a few to friends," the Mexican said as he unloaded them into the basket. "But what do you do with the rest of your time?" The Mexican looked up and smiled. "I sleep late, fish a little, play with my children, take a siesta with my wife, Julia, and stroll into the village each evening where I sip wine and play guitar with my amigos. I have a full and busy life, senor." The American laughed and stood tall. "Sir, I'm a Harvard MBA and I can help you. You should spend more time fishing and with the proceeds buy a bigger boat. In no time, you could buy several boats with the increased haul. Eventually, you'd have a fleet of fishing boats." He continued, "Instead of selling your catch to the middleman, you would sell directly to the consumer, eventually opening your own cannery. You would control the product processing and distribution. You would need to leave this small coastal fishing village, of course, and move to Mexico City, then to Los Angeles, and eventually New York City, where you could run your expanding enterprise with proper management." The fisherman asked, "But, senor, how long will all this take?" To which the American replied, 15, 20 years, 25 tops." "But what then, senor?" The American laughed and said, "That's the best part. When the time is right, you would announce an IPO and sell your company's stock to the public and become very rich. You would make millions." "Millions, senor? Then what?" "Then you would retire and move to a small coastal fishing village where you would sleep late, fish a little, play with your kids, take a siesta with your wife, and stroll to the village in the evenings where you could sip wine and play your guitar with your amigos." Is that not the best story you've ever heard? And then in the book, it proceeds to go into a more personal story of his where he's talking to a friend who is just making millions. And Tim's like, "What are you going to do with those millions?" And he's like, "Take a trip to Thailand." And it goes on to say, like, well, you could take a trip to Thailand with a couple $1,000s. You don't need millions. So the point of these stories, coming back to being intentional, is what is that best life for you? What do you really need? If you say you want to make $1,000,000, why? And that's not a bad thing. You want to make $1,000,000? Girl, dude, whoever is listening, go out and make yourself $1,000,000. You can do it. I believe in you. But why do you want to make $1,000,000? What is that million for? Because if you were making $200,000 a year, would that also be cool? Maybe. Maybe that would be more than enough. So get intentional so that not only can you live towards your best life, but you can live your best life right now. I want you to live your best life as much as I want to live my best life. And it is this practice of keeping a vision of the future as well as paying attention to what we are doing right now that's going to not only help us get there, achieve that vision, but it's going to help us be happier, be more joyful, be more fulfilled in our everyday lives right now. Because this is the time we really have, right? All right. Well, I hope that this was helpful challenge for you to think of intentional living in a little different way. I hope this challenged you to think outside of your current truth and maybe dive into some others. Maybe this is already how you think each day. And to that I say, good for you. Keep doing it. Maybe this was totally new. And take these questions with you. Listen to this episode again and take notes on it. And at the very least, share this episode with a friend. Share it with somebody who you think could also benefit from this idea of living and working more intentionally. Thank you so much for tuning in today to another episode of Here for More podcast. We are just under 5 months out from our very first surf and yoga wellness retreat. This is put on by my husband, Jess, and I. We are so excited. We are taking a group of wonderful humans to Troncones, Mexico, December 11th to 18th. If you would like to know more details about our surf and yoga retreat, the link is in the show notes. If you scroll all the way to the bottom of the show notes, the link is right there, super clear, surf and yoga wellness retreat. All the details are there. If you can't find something there, email me, message me on Instagram at Natalie J. Kraus. I'm a super open book, and this retreat is for you. This is an extension of everything you get here at the podcast. So it's living here for more real time, living for more while surfing, while doing yoga on a beautiful outdoor deck. Oh, what more could you want? So go check out the link, send me questions if you have any, and I hope to see you in Mexico. All right, well, that's all I've got for you today. Just remember that you are here for so much more. Till next time.